Peace and love. Welcome back to the Hope, the HOPE, helping our people elevate. If you've been following this series, then you already know we're about to unpack the true legacy of the Moors. Not just the warriors or builders, but the world changers. In the last episode, we explored how Moorish architecture transformed Europe's skyline. But today we're going to dive deeper. We're peeling back the layers of history to uncover how the Moors laid the foundation for modern education, science, and even language across Europe. This is a part of the story that they rarely teach, but once you know it, you'll see the world differently. So make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, but let's jump into it. Peace and love, family.
On behalf of Akuno Sankofa for Bay, you know what I'm saying? Jay, where you at? We're trying to help our people elevate. Hope. HOPE. We're giving them hope. We doing what we gotta do, you know. Every day, one step at a time, man. We gonna make it happen. Helping our people elevate. Sometimes I practice focus, thought, and meditate. I'm trying to come with other ways to help our people elevate. And seeking knowledge make me levitate. The lifted mental state is what results from how we orchestrate. This for the family's sake. Let's self-reflect and self-evaluate. And every day make sure the steps you take, you calculate. Receive a master's fate. I know I can't exist without the hate, but that's okay. I balance that with higher self today. Success is on this way, and after that my flesh can pass away.
In the last video, we traced the architectural wonders of the Moors, their places, the mosques, and gardens that transformed the very souls of European cities. But to understand the true breadth of Moorish influence, we must look beyond bricks and mortar. This next chapter journeys into the world of intellect. While much of the medieval Europe remains in the grip of superstition and ignorance, the Moors ushered in a golden age of learning, a revival of knowledge so vast and profound that it would later serve as the bedrock of the European Renaissance. So today we're going to examine the brilliance of the Moors, how they revolutionized education, preserved ancient science, enriched language, and catalyzed the global transformation in thought. This is the story of how the Moors lit the torch that re-illuminated the Western world.
And established a Muslim state known as Al-Andalus, which lasted for nearly 800 years. During this time, the Moors made significant contributions to fields such as mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, which had a lasting impact on Europe's intellectual development and brought the continent from the Dark Ages into the Renaissance. It remains a topic of interest to many curious minds as to how the African Moors became a part of Europe's evolution, and even more, what part the Moors played in birthing the now famously civilized continent known as Europe.
In the heart of Moorish Spain, Al-Andalus, education was not reserved for the elite. Cities such as Cordoba, Granada, and Toledo became beacons of scholarship, drawing thinkers and students from Africa and Middle East and Europe alike. Cordoba alone boasted over 70 libraries during the 10th century, one of which held over 400,000 volumes. At a time when Europe had much fewer than 1,000 books in circulation, the Moors had established vast repositories of wisdom. The universities of the Al-Quran in Morocco, founded by Fatima al-Fahim in 859 CE, remains the oldest continually operating university in the world. The Moors believed in the holistic development of human beings, nurturing intellect as well as spirituality. Their schools taught everything from logic and astronomy to medicine and theology, centuries before similar institutions would appear elsewhere in Europe. So now I want to go to Google, check out what Google had to say. So Google says, yes, the city of Cordoba in Spain had over 70 libraries in the 10th century, with the largest holding 600,000 books. These libraries were a significant part of Cordoba's reputation as a center of learning and culture during the golden age of Islam. So can you imagine the knowledge, how the education system was during this time frame? The intellectual minds during 600,000 books. It's a lot of books. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of books. It's a lot of knowledge. The Moors did not simply gather knowledge; they became its stewards. They translated, preserved, and expanded upon the works of the ancients: Plato, Aristotle, Galen, Ptolemy. These were thinkers whose legacies would have otherwise vanished from the West. Through Arabic translation, Moorish scholars reintroduced classical science and philosophy to Europe, but they also advanced it. Figures like Al-Zarari, considered the father of modern surgery, wrote encyclopedias of medical practices that will remain standard for centuries, that are still used today. Ibn Rashid refined Aristotelian logic, while Al-Khwarizmi, through Persian by origins, introduced algebra, algebra into Moorish Spain, and then into the European lexicon. to algebra comes from the Moors. This expansion of scientific inquiry, fostered by open dialogue between Muslims, Jews, and Christians under Moorish rule, laid the foundation for Europe's intellectual revival. So if you didn't know, algebra is where you get the name algebra from. Aljabr, algebra.
Al-Khwarizmi was born in 840 CE during the Abbasid era under the rule of Al-Ma'mun. He was closely associated with Bait al-Hikmah, an educational institute established by Abbasid Caliph. He was one of the first directors of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad in the early 9th century, as he was an excellent Persian mathematician. You all must be wondering, what is the House of Wisdom? Caliph Harun al-Rashid founded the House of Wisdom, where well-known scholars from many nations came together to share ideas and information. It was an educational and research institution where scholars made many original contributions to science. Later on, it became a center for the study of mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and chemistry. It had the largest library in the world but was destroyed in the siege of Baghdad in 1258. Al-Khwarizmi oversaw the translation of major Greek and Indian mathematics and astronomy works into Arabic and created an original work, which had a great influence on the advance of Muslim and later European mathematics. The word algorithm is derived from the Latinization of his name, and the word algebra is derived from the Latinization of al-Jabr. His important contribution to mathematics was his strong advocacy of the Hindu numerical system, which he recognized as having the power and efficiency needed to revolutionize Islamic and Western mathematics.
The Moorish imprint is undeniably carved into the language of Southern Europe. More than 4,000 Spanish words derive from Arabic, many prefixed with al, such as algebra, alcohol, almond, and alchemy. But their influence wasn't limited to vocabulary. The Moors introduced systematic grammar, poetic meters, and literary forms that influenced Castilian Spanish, Sicilian, and even aspects of early Italian and Portuguese writings. They nurtured a literary culture that prized both poetic beauty and philosophical depths. Arabic, under the Moors, was not just a language of religion, it was the language of science, mathematics, and diplomacy. Its rhythms echoed through the courts and classrooms, from the Straits of Gibraltar to the heart of Christendom.
The Moors that we know of today are the people that ruled Spain for over 700 years, from the year 700 to 1492, and made considerable advancements in art, architecture, education, and commerce. While London was still a village without a single street lamp, Cordova had a population of over 500,000 people living in over 100,000 homes. There were 700 mosques, 300 public baths, and 21 suburbs. The streets were paved and lit. The homes had marble balconies for summer and hot air ducts under the mosaic floors for winter. They were adorned with gardens and artificial fountains and orchards. Paper, a material still unknown in the rest of Europe, was everywhere. One of the most notable achievements of the Moors was the learning they brought to Spain that would eventually influence Europe, which was then in the Dark and early Middle Ages, into the very well-known Renaissance period.
The seeds of Europe's Renaissance were not born in Florence alone. They were cultivated in the illuminated manuscripts of Moorish libraries, the open forums of Andalusian schools, and the polymath minds of Muslim scholars. European thinkers such as Thomas Aquinas would later engage with the translated works of Arios. Leonardo da Vinci and Copernicus would benefit indirectly from centuries of astronomical and mathematical refinement initiated in Moorish realms. Without the Moorish transmission of ancient knowledge and their groundbreaking contributions, the so-called rediscovery of reason in Europe may have never occurred. We often hear that Europe emerged from the Dark Ages through its own doing, but the historical records tell us a deeper, richer story. The Moors brought light, not only in their architecture, but in thought, in language, in science, and in learning. Their legacy is a challenge to our collective amnesia. To know their stories is to reclaim a chapter of global history that belongs to us all, to so-called Black people. In our next episode, we continue the journey into culture and expression, exploring how Moorish music, fashion, poetry, and spiritual philosophy shaped European identity and inspired generations. Until then, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and share. Let's bring this history back to light. Peace and love, Islam, Moors.
History sometimes has a way of leaving out entire races of people from the books. All of their accomplishments and contributions to society are often deprioritized over the impressive accomplishments of the Western world. The Moors are the perfect example of this. So who were the Moors? Where were they from? And why should we remember them? The word Moor comes from the Latin term Mori, given by the Romans to the Berber people of northern Africa. which was then known as Mauritania. Variations of the Latin word are still used today, as in moreno, meaning dark complexion in Spanish. In the Philippines, a former Spanish colony, many modern Filipinos call the large, local Muslim minority concentrated in Mindanao and other southern islands Moros. It's important to note that the Berbers were indigenous to the region and predate any Arab or European occupation. Then comes the argument of their skin tone. Why weren't they black? Well, they were black,